Welcome back, and joining me for a closer look at what's played out on the market scene today is Cremen from Adviceworx. Thank you so much for your time, Caroline. Those gold counters are flying. Of course, we've seen the Resources 10 complex getting the benefit of that as it surged about 6% on the day. Goldfields, Anglo Gold, Ashanti leading the charge there. Has the environment turned risky again? Because we know what's usually behind those that gold price and those gold shares are surging.
Yeah, so the environment is risky. So where people have kind of not thought it was risky leading up to the end of last month, they were probably a little bit deluded because tariffs are not off the table. We've still got a very happy tweeter in the White House, and that's going to drive uncertainty for the next 4 years. You just need to get used to it. So gold count has been the beneficiary of that today. And that's interesting because we've seen a few inflation prints, from overseas, which actually look relatively benign. So it really appears to be more of a risk flight than an inflation hedge at this point.
Yeah, very, very interesting there. And actually just drilling into the Anglo Gold Ashanti, of course, one of the gold miners, I think it's up about 9-10% on the day. They came out with an announcement saying that there's a mine in Brazil that they are selling. I would imagine that the market is happy about that, considering that I think I saw that it is one of their smaller mines, but seeming that it is up there on the cost curve.
Yeah, and it's definitely something that all of the big miners are looking at. It's wonderful now with the gold price where it is. You get those nice margins, but the thing is, gold is cyclical, and you can't rely on this forever. So if you've got a marginal mine, it makes absolute perfect sense to offload it where we're sitting at with the gold price as it is. And it has been Anglo Gold Ashanti and Goldfields. All of these guys are looking to rationalize their businesses, really stick with quality assets that they can actually get a good return out of, and things that have got got a very high cost curve are not attractive. As South Africans and our South African gold miners, we should be fundamentally aware of that. So a good move from Anglo Gold and a good time to do it.
Yeah, and that actually means more cash for Anglo Gold Ashanti, which is a good thing in this kind of environment. Well, more moves in that mining space. Of course, we have kind of not really new, but a new PGM counter, I guess you would say, Voltera. We're no longer talking about Anglo Platinum. Of course, that demerger from the parent Anglo American has finally been complete, and they have their second listing on the London Stock Exchange. Just talk to me about what this means for the prospects of Voltera Platinum going forward as a standalone PGM business.
So I think there's a dual, obviously for Anglo American. If you looked at the share prices today, Voltera was down slightly and Anglo American was up 2%. So people have been, this is a move that people have wanted for a very long period of time. I think Anglo now retains about 19.9% of the company, so they don't have to, equity account for it in their financials. But Voltera is a little bit more interesting because there's a short-term and then there's a medium-long-term prospects for the share and the share price. It's very likely that, coming in the coming days and the coming weeks, you are going to see selling pressures there, especially from offshore investors. Some of them are not allowed to hold this type of company in terms of their mandate. They might have a mandate on diversified but not single commodities, which Voltera unfortunately is. And then there are people, like even here in South Africa, you've got like a small position in this. You just might want to offload it from the portfolio. On the medium to long term, I think this is a little bit more interesting because I think a month or two ago we were kind of thinking, well, platinum is going to be dead. It's going to be dead for for a few months.
Yep.
And that theory seems to be changing and evolving. And you're starting to see a bit of a pickup of an interest in the platinum sector as a whole. So I think probably less severe negative impact to Voltera in the medium term, as long as that whole thesis of we still need platinum is remains, and that can turn on a dime, especially if you've got trade wars flying around.
Yeah, indeed. Well, let's take a look at another company that does have mining interests, but also broadly in the construction sector, and that is Robex. We did see in morning trade that share price surging about 10% after the release of their annual results, and actually another announcement that came out talking about the outcome of the independent investigation that was taken on allegations by a whistleblower saying that it found no wrongdoing. All good news on all fronts there.
Really good set of results. It's a pity that you can't unpack what part of that price reaction was due to the the kind of finishing off of this whistleblower report, whatever it was, and them coming out clean. Just to tell just remind people there was an independent party also assessing the whistleblowers allegations. So this is not just the board of directors saying this. And then they came out with really, really nice results. Those results were actually finalized before before the whistleblower. So they've been sitting there probably biting their nails, really want to bring this fantastic set of results to the market. Revenue, I mean, for a construction company, and a construction company that is kind of a little bit involved with mining, I mean, when you have revenue up 21%, headline earnings up 25%, they generated cash of 32%. I always find it hilarious when a construction company actually does generate actual cash. It's always a very, very good sign. And that really is coming from their roads business. They've got a massive order book with Transnet, mainly based in Natal, but, in a couple of other parts of South Africa as well. That part of the order book, 13.6%, but their overall order book sitting at about 28 billion. So that's really, really nice to see. The only part of their business that wasn't doing too well was the materials and mining. So I think Robex is probably right to stick to roads as their priority at this point.
All right. Well, Telkom came out with a further annual trading update today. For continuing operations, the telecoms company says that it expects its adjusted headline earnings per share to rise by as much as 105%. We did see that share popping 6% in morning trade. Is this a confirmation of Telkom's upward momentum and trajectory?
Not necessarily. The results look spectacular, but you're coming off a very low base to start with.
Okay.
And then they had a transaction in the period where they sold their masts and their towers business, made a very, very nice profit on that. And they received 6.5 billion rands worth of cash. So a fantastic position to be in. I'm sure all the shareholders are happy to see that, hopefully waiting for a nice dividend as well. But it's a little bit difficult to read into it. Are the continuing operations still going to be in order? And you'll probably have to wait for the next financials actually to see it, because they're not really comparable at this point. I think the general issues that were there are probably going to persist. The telecoms industry in general, you see the Vodacom, you see the MTN, it is a commoditized business. Everyone's competing for the same clients and margins are reducing. So nice to have a cash pile in an environment like this, but it hasn't necessarily changed the overall business.
All right. Well, let's take a look at Momentum. It came out with its 9-month operating update. The group says that the growth it saw in the interim period has filtered through to the next 3 months, the third quarter there. Some pressure in some metrics like the present value of new business premiums. But would you say that overall the group performed solidly?
Look, I think it was solid and unexciting. I think we're in a difficult environment for because a lot of insurance can be a little bit discretionary. So, but not great. It's definitely not a growth stock. I mean, your recurring premiums up 5%. That's not great. When your costs are up 5%, and then the single premium business and the new business premiums, are actually down. I mean, it remains retail did well, but then on there it's only up 1%. I think that the bright part there is that Africa is up 29%, still a very, very small part of their business. But, going into Africa and India also growing very, very well. Yeah. So probably the strategy to go into Africa and to India, that's where you're going to get the growth from, because it looks as if the South African business, like I said, is solid, but definitely not in a growth territory at all. Yeah. It's a maintenance territory right now.
All right. Well, talking about growth, before we get to your stock pick for today, Caroline, Hyprop gave us an update today on the level of optimism that is received from investors on a potential buyout of a controlling stake in Mass PLC. There was also an capital raise, that an accelerated book build that did close today. Talk to me about those moves that we were seeing out of Hyprop.
It's an interesting transaction. It's again, Hyprop, very much South African based, Mass obviously offshore. So again, I think, South African property guys, is this a trend again that we want to actually bring in, the offshore parts of it back into the business, to actually get the revenue and growth out of that.
Yeah.
We went through a period when everyone wanted to go offshore. And then we went through a period where everyone tried to unbundle the offshore, and now this seems to be going in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
But there are apparently institutional investors who like the idea, and it does appear as if that book build was successful. I didn't see an update on that, but it probably was.
All right. Well, talking about ideas that we like, let's get to your stock pick for today.
All right. Well, it is Arista Networks, and it's another way to actually play the data center space. What Arista Networks does is that they build high-performance network switches, routers, and software for these big data centers. Their clients are Microsoft, Facebook, and other hyperscalers. They've got really good margins, fantastic cash flow. And if you look at it, high PE, but if you look at the price to sales, probably looking a little bit more reasonable. So I don't think it's terribly expensive considering the massive growth that you're going to have in data and data centers and artificial intelligence. So just an alternate way of actually accessing the growth in that sector.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time and for your insights on what has moved investors' money today, Caroline. Lots that we went through today. That was Caroline Cremen from Adviceworx.